Hey everyone, Joe Fox here. Welcome to another episode of Retain, Grow, Thrive. I'm your host, the president at Growave, and I'm very, very excited today. I'm not sure if this is coming in at the same time because of the way that we launch these episodes, but recently I obviously had another very, very cool gentleman on talking about environmental sustainability. But today I'm really excited to welcome uh, Mirvise, and he's going to be here talking about the Good API. And I think this is going to be a really, really good episode. I think it's really important that we're all doing our part to help the environment and sustainability. So I'm really, really excited to welcome Mirvise. Mirvise, welcome to the show.
Yeah,
Can you
thanks,
tell
Joe.
us a little bit about what you're doing with the Good API? Because I think this is really, really crucial listening for the audience.
Yeah, sounds good. So I'm Mirvise, one of the co-founders of GoodAPI. GoodAPI is really meant to do two things for helping brands. One is to make it really simple to make a sustainability program as part of their e-commerce journey. So whether you want to plant trees per order or remove a kilogram of ocean-bound plastic, we want to make it like you could really take 10 minutes in to set up that campaign right away. And then the second thing we want to help brands is we want to take any impact you're making out of a paragraph in an about us page, like, oh, we plant, we support reforestation, and actually blend it in parts of your entire e-commerce journey. So, integration with Klaviyo to make sure emails go out, integration with Growave so you can plant trees in exchange for points, integration with Shopify Flow so you can do it for every review. And we have like integration with customer accounts so every customer can see their personal impact based on all their orders. So really blend impact as part of the e-commerce journey so that it actually pays back dividends to the brand itself. So that kind of what Good API does in a nutshell. We focus a lot on verified projects. So we plant trees in Madagascar, in Kenya, Brazil, in the United States. We also remove ocean-bound plastic in Southeast Asia and Egypt and Brazil. But the projects we work with are highly verified. We have technology deployed at these sites to monitor the work, to make sure that if we say a tree is being planted, we actually have exact record of that tree being planted. And not only planting, because putting a seed in the ground is super easy, but it's important to actually watch it grow over 5, 10, 15 years, because that's when the carbon sequestration happens, right? So the
Yes.
trees need to mature, and partners that we work with have land access rights and make sure they're committed for that long term, to make sure the trees actually mature and develop and have the impact that we claim it will.
I love that. And I think, you're 100% right. It's so important to be able to track that sustainability and to be able to actually manage those projects and watch them flourish, pardon the pun, grow.
Yeah.
But Mavice, tell me, is is what you're doing, obviously it's incredibly like, from looking from an outsider's perspective, it must be incredibly rewarding, right? To be able to like really bring this to the masses. You mentioned very clearly about helping e-commerce brands contribute to this. May I ask, what's the kind of conversations that you typically have with a brand when they want to get involved with the Good API? Is it very much like, hey, this is the impact you can have, or is it more, this is the impact that we've already had?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things, right? Sometimes we speak to brands that have been doing something like this on their own. Maybe they're manually sending a check every month to a nonprofit or to an organization that does this kind of work, but it's very opaque in terms of what they're getting back. And it's very manual. So through the Good API, it not only automates it, but we provide a lot of that images, photography, videos of the work being done on the ground, so they can actually embed that in their storytelling. Um, so,
Nice.
so that part,
Nice.
that's one kind of conversation. Is like can we do what you're already doing, but in a much better, transparent way. And then for some brands, they may have sustainability as part of their brand value, right? Maybe they're using sustainable materials, and their sustainable packaging. And this just kind of adds another layer of sustainability to their operations, because now they can actually plant trees or remove ocean-bound plastic, and tell that story to their customers. So it really depends on what stage a brand is at. We, you know, we think that it's never too early to start a sustainability impact. Like they know that old phrase, like the best time to plant a tree was
Yes.
20 years ago, and the next
Couldn't be
time's
more
today.
fitting.
Yeah.
Couldn't be more fitting. Yeah.
So so we literally help brands start at any stage, get this program started and start to engage their eco-conscious customers as well.
I love that. And I think, you mentioned Shopify earlier. We're
Yeah,
obviously at Growave heavily involved in the Shopify ecosystem, and I think I have to say that I see a lot of brands and up and coming brands that really put a lot of this CSR and sustainability at a really big focal point of their brand, and not for a sales, cliche kind of a look at us, we're doing the right thing, but I think from a genuine sense of purpose and a genuine sense of care. I see a lot more, kind of sustainable fashion brands popping up that are doing
yeah.
really big numbers as well. Like I think it used to be a little less mainstream and there'd be a very specific audience. But may I ask, do you think that the younger generations are kind of, would I be correct in assuming that the younger generations are really, kind of adopting the sustainability practices a lot earlier on and, planting the trees a lot earlier on, so to speak?
Yeah, I think if you look at the statistics, they say like 70% or 80% of Generation Z customers, they're more likely to purchase from a brand that is giving back to the planet versus one that doesn't. So I think
Wow.
the consumers today, especially the younger generation, are much more in tune with the impact of their transactions, and they're thinking about their future, and the kind of world that they're going to inherit. So
Yes.
they're really keen on, whether through their personal work or through their e-commerce actions, to somehow make a meaningful, even if it's small, uh, give back to the planet, right? So I've got two little girls, right, and I think
Yep.
about their future, and I think about the planet that they're going to inherit from us, and so that's kind of my inspiration behind the work we do here, to make sure they have a world that they can play in. And a lot of the consumers that we work with, the brands that we work with, they have customers that think about the same way, especially in like, home decor, children's products, cosmetics, jewelry. We find that a lot of brands, especially with female audiences, they tend to be more empathetic, and they're really looking forward to giving back and thinking about their future, children's future, to make sure that it is sustainable and beautiful and a great place to live and play.
Absolutely. I love that. And talk about a really strong vision that's, guiding your principles. I really love that. And congratulations on having two daughters. That's amazing.
Thanks.
And the next kind of thing I want to kind of dive into is how did how did the Good API come about? What was your background? Have you always had this really strong focus on sustainability? You mentioned, your daughters are a big part of that vision and that and a
Yeah.
catalyst for that focus. But has this something that's always kind of, been a part of your thoughts or?
Yeah, so my background is in product management. So I've worked with startups and large public tech companies building digital products. In one of my gigs, I used to work for a company called Ecobee. We used to build
Okay.
smart thermostats, very similar to Nest in the United States. And
Yeah.
and the promise behind smart thermostat like Ecobee was that it helps reduce energy usage around your house, to make sure the AC and the heating systems turn on at the optimal times and run for an optimal amount of time, right? Because heating and cooling is the biggest energy consumption in the United States and Canada households. So that's kind of
Yes.
where one of the seeds was planted, pardon my pun, around the
We'll be
using
using
techno.
those a lot, so don't
Yeah.
apologize.
So using technology to make impact at mass, right? And reducing our own environmental footprints. So that's where kind of it started all. And then once I've always wanted to do something of my own. When I got into e-commerce, one of the companies I was looking at is called Tentree. They're based out of Vancouver, Canada, and they plant 10 trees for every product they sell. So that's
Wow.
kind of their promise. And they're a huge brand. And I looked at them and I thought that's an incredible, program. But the amount of effort it takes to like build and launch a program like that is a lot, right? So you need a whole sustainability team to go and verify these partners that you work with. You need developers to create assets and widgets and extensions to tell the story, a sustainability page. So we were like, how can we democratize that ability so that someone with like 10 people in their brands, 10 employees, can have a similar program as a company who has like 500 employees, right? So that's what Good
Yes.
API came in. We want to be the sustainability team. Like, behind the scenes, we vet out the nonprofits, we get certificates from them, we make sure that we get geo coordinates of the trees that are planted, we get all these records and verify everything so that you can just brands can focus on, like building their products and selling, and we take care of all their sustainability work. So we're basically a sustainability arm, and that was kind of the inspiration, like both my work at ecobee and some of the work I saw with other big brands that are doing this.
Absolutely. I love that. And so, um, tell me a little bit more, because being from Australia originally, and, there's this close affinity with like Indonesia and Southeast Asia, and I've
Yeah,
traveled a lot through there. And, there was always these big stark differences when you see an Australian beach versus going to Southeast Asia and seeing, the sheer amount of pollution not just in the
yeah,
water, but on the beaches and everything as well. You mentioned that the good API, besides focusing on, carbon emissions through planting of trees and everything like that, you also mentioned there's the cleaning up of the oceans. And
yeah,
Southeast Asia was one of the locations you mentioned, but I just
yeah,
want to grab onto that because it's relatable to me.
yeah.
Um, Tell me a little bit more about how that process works.
Yeah, so one of the biggest problems in coastal cities within 50 kilometers of the ocean, such as a lot of cities in Southeast Asia, is that there's not really a good infrastructure for plastic recycling and plastic management. So what ends up
Mm,
happening
mm.
is, a lot of the population would chuck the plastic bottles, plastic bags to the side of the road or anywhere, right? And then you have a heavy rain downpour that washes all that plastic into the riverbanks, to the rivers and the oceans, and as you said, the beaches, right? So
Yes. Yeah.
we work with partners. One of them is called Plastic Bank. It actually pays folks in Southeast Asia, in these countries, to go collect plastic from riverbanks, from the beaches, from any lands around the ocean, right? Take it to a designated recycling depot that is operated by them. There, the plastic gets weighed. They get paid
Yep.
based on the amount of plastic they return. The plastic then gets cleaned, processed, recycled into like little granules, and then it's sold to companies like Windex, which create recycled plastic bottles for their Windex sprays. So it's really like a holistic circular economy that's built, because not only are the local population being paid, but they're also trained, right? The importance of plastic
Yes.
recycling and the amount of money they get paid. They get benefits for healthcare and education, but also
Nice.
they're passing down this knowledge of plastic management down to them and their children, right? And we get cleaner oceans and cleaner rivers in return. So it's a really beautiful program that both benefits the planet and the local population there.
Absolutely. And I really love those kind of initiatives that are circular. So not only is it kind of recognizing this immediate benefit of what's being contributed, but as you said, it's like a lot of the times I don't think people are maliciously going out and damaging
Mm-hmm.
the environment. It's from a lack of options or a lack of understanding or lack of education. But I really like the fact that this process encourages better habits because there is that educational piece involved,
Yeah.
passed on to other generations. And the long-term hope of that is that it continues to become stronger and stronger. And then obviously one day, all being well and everything, and initiatives like yours are employed so much that it's going really, really quickly in a net zero fashion, as opposed to
Yeah.
growing to a point where it's uncontrollable.
Yeah, you almost want to put yourself out of business where you don't need to
Yeah,
do this
yeah,
anymore
yeah,
because
yeah,
everything
absolutely.
the
Yeah,
system's already in place to, plant trees or remove. They don't need to remove plastic because everything is recycled in such a efficient manner that you don't need to do that anymore. So, and I think that's kind of
absolutely.
future we want to work towards.
Yeah, one of the rare startups where having nothing to do and is considered a win as opposed to a failure. So that's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that. And tell me, what does the future look like for the Good API? I can sort of like imagine that obviously you want to continue scaling and
Yeah.
expanding and more regions and more customers and more impact. But is there anything that you sort kind of see coming on the roadmap, from a, I guess, quote unquote product, kind of functionality wise?
Yeah, so we're driven by our customers, right? And the feedback they give us and the kind of impact they want to make. One of the things that our customers want to do is carbon neutral shipping is one thing that we come across quite often. Is how do we through Shopify, automatically look at the weight of the product, the distance it's going to travel from the fulfillment center to wherever the customer's house is, the mode of transportation, whether it's through airplane or like through the car, calculating the carbon emissions and
Oh,
actually
wow.
emit the sequestering the same amount of carbon out through carbon
Wow.
removal programs to make that a carbon neutral shipping program. So that's one option. Um, One of the other things we hear a lot from our customers is that they want to give back to the planet, but sometimes they want to change it to give back to a children's AIDS
Mm,
program or to a veterans affairs program or to an animal shelter, right? So one of the things that we're exploring is how can Good API, which Hope Man says good for the planet, good for the business, can expand from not only climate impact but also more social impact initiatives as well, to
yeah,
give customers the flexibility they want. For the meantime, we're focused on like highly transparent, verified climate initiatives. That's where we've started. But down the road, we want to help customers make any impact they want in a seamless, easy way so that they can focus on their business and we help them make verified impact.
I love that. Yeah, I got a lot of, obviously the environment's incredibly important to me, but I've got a lot of causes that I kind of donate to through whether it be my wife and I through our
Yeah.
church or ones that are, relevant and specific to us. And then I've, got a lot of friends who are veterans and all of that sort of thing. And that's definitely an area, particularly you're from Canada, I'm from Australia. I think we probably do a bit better of a job in it than what I see is done in the US in terms of looking after veterans. So
Hmm.
that's awesome to hear that's on the roadmap. But I think the impact you're having, by being very niche and focused on it, environmental impact and net neutral shopping experiences is really cool. So that's something to be really proud of. Lastly, I'd love to be, I feel like we could chat forever, so I'd love to do a
Yeah.
part two of this and, continue to see how your journey's going. But I would love for the audience, to be able to take some action,
Yeah.
from this podcast. I think that's super important. I think, especially when people are engaged with this and we all know how much content is out there and, how busy our days are. And sometimes we have the best intentions, but we get sidetracked by something else. So I'd love it if you could, Mirvise, explain to the audience like what is some quick ways that they can implement this. Like for example, if they're a customer of Growave, a customer of Shopify, how do they get involved with the Good API?
Yeah, I think if you search, look for us in Good API on the Shopify App Store. If you search for plant trees, tree planting will pop up. You can see we're the number one app. We've got over 200 five-star reviews. We also make it really easy and risk-free to try it. The first 100 trees are covered by us. The first 2 kilograms of ocean-bound plastic are covered by us. So it's completely
Wow.
free. And we do that because we want not only to plant trees and but also allow customers an easy way to try things out and set it up without actually worrying about the cost. So that's one way. And two, I'm open on LinkedIn. Reach out to me, Mirvise Najafe. You'll see my name there. Any questions you have, any concerns, reach out to me. I can provide, a lot of information about where we plant trees, the kind of trees we plant, the verification we do, the monitoring, and its overall impact. So, I love talking trees, and I think it's a beautiful story to tell for any brand, and happy to kind of help answer any questions that your audience might have.
I love that, Mavice. Thank you so much for that. And just to add to that point, I'll make sure those links are in the show notes, your
Yeah.
LinkedIn, the Shopify App Store listing, and your direct website. But I think one of the things I really love about what you guys do is the video content and the storytelling that you're doing, about actually showing what happens and what's involved. So I encourage the audience to go check that out. And, if you are a customer on Shopify, an e-commerce brand, which I know a lot of the listeners and watchers are, um, please go do something about this. Like, at least try it and see what it looks like for you. I think we can all be doing better to be helping the environment. I know some people may already be doing their things external to this, and hopefully you are, but I think this is a really quick, easy, impactful win to
Yeah,
have. And from a partnerships perspective, if any of our partners are watching this, which I know you are, please make sure that you check out the Good API because you have very good reach to be able to, get this really impactful legacy driven, product to be able to into more hands and do more good in the world. So
yeah.
yeah,
And the
I think that's important.
Earth Month is coming, right? April
Yes.
2026. So
Yes.
it's at a time where all your customers are even more attuned to the impact they're making to the planet. So it's actually a great time to even launch a program. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, thank you so much for that. And look, thank you so much, Mirvise, for coming on. I
Yeah, thanks.
really enjoyed this conversation. I will be definitely suggesting this to a lot of our merchants and
Thanks.
and people in my network. No, thank you. I think it's really important that people do this work, and I think a lot of people want to do these things and they don't necessarily
Yeah.
know how to get started or anything like that. And I think it's really impactful that you're actually doing it and you're making it easy for e-commerce entrepreneurs to do their part as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe. It was really nice meeting you, chatting with you, and hearing your story and sharing mine. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for advice. And you'll definitely be coming back for a part two. I'd
Yeah,
love
I'm
to,
looking forward to it.
yeah, I'd love to be able to chat about the impact you've had, in the next 12 months, but, looking retroactively. So, yeah, that'd be really cool. And, audience, as I mentioned, please check out those links below. I think everything that Movice is doing with the Good API, these are all incredible initiatives, as I said, that I think you should all take a part in. So please check out the links below. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Retain, Grow, Thrive, the Growave podcast. I'm your host, Joe Fox, and I'll see you again with another episode soon.